And that crash site is right behind me, Adrian. The range of green hills that you see right behind me is where this Air Blue plane crashed about 4 hours ago, 10 a.m. Local time. Perhaps the most remarkable development today is reports by Pakistani officials that there have been survivors, but there are conflicting reports. You have the information minister saying that 8 people have survived, the interior minister, Rahman Malik, saying 5 people survived, but it seems, based on those reports, that at least some people have survived, which again is remarkable. But the death toll at this point stands at 25. Local government officials saying 25 bodies recovered from this crash scene. One thing that's important to point out to our viewers, there were reports initially on local Pakistani TV that this flight, this Air Blue flight, originated somewhere in Turkey, then went to Karachi, then made its way to Islamabad. Turkish officials now telling CNN that that is not the case, that this Air Blue plane did not originate from Turkey. So it looks like it originated from Karachi, the southern port city in Pakistan, made its way to Islamabad, where about 10 a.m. it crashed into the Margala Hills. This is a low elevation, a range of hills north of Islamabad. A spokesperson for Air Blue tells us that 152 people were on board, 6 of them crew members, 146 passengers. The weather at the time was very poor. We've had steady rains over the past 24 hours. At times this morning, those rains were very heavy. It is much too early, officials tell us, to say that weather was a factor, but that's something that they'll obviously look at. Weather is going to be a factor, and it is a factor while these rescue efforts are taking place, and so is the terrain. Margala Hills is very rough terrain, very few roads and paths to get there, and people, as you look at the scene, making their way up on foot to the crash site, because that's one of the few ways to get up there is by foot. I believe we have a picture of this Air Blue plane before the crash. It is a model Airbus A321, and again, departed Karachi this morning, made its way to Islamabad. We're looking into this. Our airline expert, Richard Quest, is looking into this, but this may be the first crash of an Airbus. This was a relatively new airplane, about 10 years old. In Air Blue, the second largest airline here in Pakistan, based on what we're hearing from airline officials and airline experts, they haven't had an incident like this. They've had a very good record. This is an airline that started in around 2004. It started domestically here in Pakistan, expanded its services to the Middle East, and also flying to Europe right now, I believe Manchester. But the big story right now, the rescue efforts that are taking place, because of the challenge of getting to this place. It's very difficult to get to because of the terrain, the heavily wooded area. These are efforts that could take the entire day. The Army is getting into the mix. The military telling CNN that 3 helicopters are at the scene, but they haven't been able to land near the crash site because, frankly, there is no place to land. So, again, that's the biggest challenge, getting to the scene right now, Adrian.
Yeah, Reza, you mentioned Richard Quest. We'll be talking to him in just a moment about that crash, possibly the first fatality, the first fatal accident involving an A321. We'll get the details from him in just a moment. Hang on, Reza, I want to talk to you again in just a moment. But first, you mentioned the information minister as well. Let's hear from him talking earlier about the difficulty of reaching that crash site.
This is a very difficult area, very difficult terrain over there. There are no land routes, especially road routes over there. Our rescue teams, National Disaster Management, our military operations, and the other the support agencies, fire brigade, all the forces are there to evacuate the people or to reach the debris of the incident site and the remains of the aircraft.
That was Pakistan's information minister speaking earlier here on CNN. Reza, you live in Islamabad. You spoke about the Margala Hills behind you there. Do aircraft routinely come in over that range of hills to the airport?
No, they don't. The airport here in the federal capital of Islamabad is south of the city. The Margalla Hills are north of the city. So it's very unusual for a plane, a passenger plane, to fly low over Islamabad going north towards the Margalla Hills. And I should point out, I don't know if this was the plane that crashed, but I did see, while having coffee this morning at a coffee shop in the federal capital of Islamabad, a low-flying plane. I was having coffee with a friend, and all of a sudden she said, "Look behind you, there's a low-flying plane." I turned around, and indeed I saw a very large passenger plane heading north towards the Margalla Hills. When planes come into the capital at the airport here, they usually don't cross over Islamabad and head north because, again, the airport is to the south. About 30 minutes after we saw that passenger plane, there were the reports of the crash. I can't definitively say if indeed the plane I saw was the plane that crashed, but certainly a very unusual scene. Adrian?
Reza, something that was quite heartening among this carnage, this tragedy today, I suppose, was it speaks volumes about the nature of Pakistani people in the way that they rushed to the site to help.
Yeah, even when you don't need help, Pakistani people reach out to you. They're very hospitable, they're very warm people, and when there is time to get down and help, they take it to another level. We've seen it already. Local villagers, local Pakistanis with their traditional Pakistani garb, the shalwar kameez, making their way through bad weather, through rough terrain to this crash site. And that's nothing unusual here in Pakistan. You can be sure in the hours and maybe in the days to come, there's going to be just local Pakistanis helping with these rescue efforts. And that's the kind of people they are here in Pakistan. You rarely hear about that with the problems with the militancy and the extremism here that we often hear about on the news. But one thing that people should know about Pakistanis, when there's a time when people are in need, they come to help.